Evening, everyone. So my name is Alex Bardell. I'm the chair of the BCS Green Group. And so thank you very much for coming to our AGM. And today we've got a couple of presentations. First one I'm going to do, which is looking at sustainability reporting, something that's moving around quite a lot right now, but there's definitely some things going on. And what I really want to talk a bit about is really what are these things driving sustainability? And there's the sustainability standards, which are kind of either within the UK, the European Union, or in the globe, which is kind of driving companies to do things. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about how you actually take what is a kind of business consultancy facing thing and actually make it into a technology solution, which is about collecting and collating data. Also thought of try to think a little bit around artificial intelligence. You can't have a presentation without AI. So how could agentic AI help you with your sustainability goals? And then if I've got time, then I maybe want to talk a little bit about software development, sustainability, the Green Software Foundation, and how companies and organizations are looking at developing some more sustainable software. So let's start off with this concept of sustainability awareness within companies and I guess the reporting. So in the beginning, it was really like a sort of Ben and Jerry's thing. It's the companies driving their sort of corporate sustainability to do the right thing. Then in the late 90s, the things like the Global Reporting Initiative and the UN Global Carbon Disclosure Projects all started. So it began to getting a bit more mature. At the same time, obviously the COPs have been running. So the UN COP started in 92. The big thing was the climate change commitments of Paris 2015. And so that then rolls on to companies and organizations starting to develop these things called the ESGs, which is the environmental, social, and governance reporting standards. The UK in 2019 adopted the streamlined energy carbon reporting, the greenhouse gas protocols. These are scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, not yet. But then a very important thing that kind of happened is that we then moved to the next generation of reporting. So in COP26, I think it was in Glasgow, was the formation of the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB. And they then started defining a set of reporting standards which are more aligned to what we see as financial reporting. So a set of standards that come in with the company's financial reports, and it's a sustainable reporting. And in 2025, and it's just starting now in 2026. So 2025, the UK started implementing its new sustainability reporting standard called the SRS. And this year is the kind of first year that it's actually being implemented. So companies who were previously aligned to the old standard will now need to start looking at implementing the SRS. So what's driving change? So obviously ESG reporting has been the kind of main driver for the last decade or so, but that's kind of changing a bit. The European Union has mandated that it has its Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which is the CSRD. Now, obviously, the UK is not in the EU, but if you're a UK company and you're functioning and you have organisations and function groups in the European Union, and you meet a certain criteria, then obviously you'll be expected to do the same thing, and the same with the UK SRS. So a lot of the financial reporting standards are now driving sustainability reporting. So we've got the financial reporting standard from the IFRS, which are the International Financial Reporting Standard, and they do a lot of the accountancy standards, and now they've taken on the role of doing sustainability reporting with their S1, S2. And then something that's always been there, which is the greenhouse gas streamline reporting, but mostly companies were looking at having to do their concept of the scope 1. So that's direct emissions. So if you have heating, cooling within your company. Scope 2, indirect, and this is basically where people have been reporting for quite a long time. So this would be fuel or electricity. But the big one is scope 3, which is what are the carbon emissions associated with your upstream, downstream supply chain. And this is probably the feedback is that it's difficult. So people are finding it difficult to do that. But it's also where most of the carbon emissions sit. So these are kind of like some of the key terms, if you look to see how we've gone on this pathway to the ESG, you can see how as time's going on, but very importantly, within sort of 23, 24, 25, that's when a lot of the more mature standards are becoming part of what we want. Obviously, the big caveat is the last 12 months have seen a whole load of change, particularly with one individual who has decided that he doesn't want to do anything like this. And this is kind of putting a bit of uncertainty, our best way to describe it. I mean, I guess if we believe that climate change isn't going away, we will need to do some reporting. But some of the pushback that we're getting from companies is probably rightly so, which is that actually, this is proving to be quite difficult. And especially with things like Scope 3 reporting, it's going to take quite a lot of effort to do it. And certainly companies are saying that we're under a lot of pressure to deal with other things right now at this point in time. And really, we don't want any more burden in terms of doing something that doesn't necessarily give us a return. And so that's probably quite important for companies. So what is this UK Sustainability Reporting Standard? So again, it's based on a shift from an ESG reporting process to a IFRS, which is again the ISSB, but the S1 part is general sustainability related disclosure. So disclosing sustainability risks and opportunities applies to all topics, environment, social and governance. So ESG is still in there, but it's not as prevalent. And it has its 4 pillars, which is governance, strategy, risk management, metrics and targets. And then also bring in this concept of materiality. So companies must assess what materials are based on their own circumstances and investor relevance. But it's a general shift away from the more kind of like Ben and Jerry's ESG to something that's very much more an accountancy-based thing. And at the core of it, like all of the others, is that the fact that Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 actual carbon emissions is a kind of fundamental part of the UK SRS. The same can be said for the when we talk about ESG reporting, which has been the main reporting mechanism for the last 10 years, it's kind of a focus a bit away from maybe the social and the governance. So it's definitely more focusing on environmental. But one of the challenges is that in a number of reporting standards, the companies have already invested quite a lot in the delivery of ESG reporting. So then to be said that this is no longer valid isn't ideal. So what the kind of general consensus is that as we develop ESG reporting to a new phase, effectively, we're kind of moving away from the more socially and governance-y part of things and just kind of focusing more on the environmental side, climate change, the impact that climate change will have on your business, so that you can actually do some reporting on that and understanding what your risks are, and a little less focus on the social and the governance. And the governance is kind of covered anyway in other reporting, so it's probably not necessary. But also ESG reporting has had a lot of pushback in the last couple of years, and it certainly opens us up for risks, particularly from some of the more right-wing individuals, that it's just not, it's not focusing on one of the main things. So generally people are moving away from this. But also with the formation of the Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB, it's kind of bringing in the next generation of reporting. Again, so the EU have their Sustainability Reporting Directive. It's was supposed to come in last year, but there's delay and pushback. And one of the main pushbacks is it's too difficult, it's too complicated. Need to understand what the approach is, and the EU has decided to do a more phased approach, which is effectively delaying it. And I think that's because lots of external factors are making it too difficult. But the other thing is that to get all of the data, and this is the next bit, companies are finding it very difficult to collate and capture that data that's going to be needed to do the reporting. And because that's the challenge, we really feel that this has kind of been driven front-ended. So it's a kind of consultative, advisory approach, which is telling companies that this is the kind of data they need to collect and this is the kind of reporting they need to do. But one of the challenges is it hasn't been necessarily driven from the back ends as vigorously. So rather than seeing this as a consultative problem, seeing it as a data problem, the collation and capture and collection of data, the management of the data and the reporting of this data to the sustainability reporting front-end tools has been challenging, and is challenging with accuracy. So I guess from the BCS is, can we help people with their sustainability reporting? But we're kind of putting this on with our kind of IT hat. And so if there's a reporting environment which has a framework associated with it, which has the data fields, where we can help is say, actually, this is a data problem, because without being able to populate that data into these systems and solutions, companies are finding it difficult, and the data problem is actually proving to be quite expensive. So I'm going to talk a little about Microsoft Sustainability Manager. This is just an example of a tool, a technology tool that allows companies to do sustainability reporting. It was kind of built around ESG, but fundamentally what Microsoft have tried to do here is use their standard packages, running it in the Azure cloud. One thing it has is it has a direct API into the cloud, so you can measure the carbon footprint associated with your Microsoft cloud products. It has a number of APIs provided as part of the solution, but the general consensus is this is a sort of sustainability management tool set. It has a database, data back end. It has a load of API connections. It had a load of standard connectors. It can connect into third parties. It can connect into the Microsoft tools, and then it uses the Microsoft suite to actually allow you to do analytics on the data. Power BI is your dashboard. You can use Excel to do the reports, and it's a kind of a product in a package which is there for sustainability reporting. On the downside, it's kind of limited on its scope of what you can do. So you have to do what Microsoft have on there. It's quite expensive, but I've just used as an example. There is a similarly a more sort of open source approach you can do using open source software. There's something similar you can use on something like AWS, which is again a more kind of cheaper way of doing it. But the kind of fundamental problem that needs to be solved is trying to collate and capture this data for the reporting, but do it in a cost-effective way. So I had a little project last year, and I sort of thought about this and come up with a kind of conceptual architecture for sustainability reporting, which you could effectively put on any set of products that you want to use. I mean, effectively, there's a data layer. So you basically want data that's maybe raw, external data through an API, internal data, some sort of emissions data. You then take your raw data, put it into a data store. I mean, this is kind of standard architecture. You then need to do some transformation, importation, actually working on that data to define a data model and a set of custom reports. And then once you've had that data, then you then can put it into your sort of control panel and present it either through a canonical model. So then you've got some reports you can generate. So if you have compliance reports, effectively you can develop something called a client portal, because one of the things about Scope 3 carbon emissions is that all of your customers and clients need you to provide them with the carbon emissions associated with the footprint they're consuming from you. So then you need to be able to provide that client with all of the data they need, just as you need your clients to provide you with all of your data. And then there's obviously ongoing support and management that needs to happen. But effectively, this sort of conceptual architecture I came up with a client I was working for last year, you could kind of use this for any set of products. And a lot of this is just, if the company already has a data analytics capability and is already doing some reporting and BI and business intelligence around data, then theoretically you can just plug in carbon emissions data source and do your scope 3 reporting, and then that would help you do some of the other reporting without having to invest heavily on a whole new set of platforms and infrastructure to deliver it. And so similarly, we can't do anything without AI today. And as time develops, we kind of wonder whether AI is maybe something that can help you do something rather than being the thing that does everything, because it's kind of some risks and unknowns. So I've sort of come up with this conceptual idea of how you could build a AI system. So effectively here on the right-hand side, we have our kind of existing capabilities that are within the organization, effectively their ecosystem architecture, which is all of their software and data that's held within their existing systems. On the other side, we've got your AI distributors. So I guess this is more going to be agentic AI or something akin to maybe a small language model, which is focusing specifically on sustainability reporting rather than your ChatGPT, Gen AI, large language models. But in concept, effectively, you want to be extracting data from your core systems and being able to use AI to actually look at it to then help define what your roadmap might look like. And if you take that to the next level down, one of the kind of challenges, I guess, with AI is that you probably don't want to point a LLM or even a small language model at some of your very specific data, and there might be lots of data that kind of exists outside of your organization. So reality is that if we're looking at using AI and agentic AI to help build a reporting environment, we're definitely going to have to use this concept of the MCPs, which is the standard AI integration portal, effectively what would have been your sort of API layers to collate data. But I sort of think that the internal data sources need to be kept away from the external data sources, and therefore you somehow need to be taking the data that you want, putting it into a safe environment, keeping it away from your own data sources, then being able to use an AI agentic tool to actually then interrogate your data and help you with your sustainability reporting. The other advantage of using something like an agentic AI is a lot of the kind of sustainability reporting standards are quite well known. So therefore, if there's any changes to the framework, or you want to ask questions of that framework, then AI should help you actually go out and collate that data and help you build effectively a business process and deliver a sustainability reporting capability based on data that's out there. And this maybe is a way of kind of building a reporting environment for, say, something like scope 3 reporting, which is very well understood, been around for a long time, that this will then help build that business process, help build that data collection, and help build the framework. And then maybe this is a way of getting around that problem, which is to do sustainability reporting in a more kind of legacy traditional approach for how you capture your data and build an environment, which is, the feedback is that's too expensive, it's too time consuming. Would it be possible to use agentic AI and manage your internal data in a way that you can point the models at it to then get you to a point where you can reduce the cost? Because really one of the big challenges is too expensive to do sustainability reporting, and companies are saying they can't see the benefit. So is AI a way of actually automating some of that and actually reducing the cost of doing it? And I guess, if you want to build that roadmap, you have to identify the user case, understand its suitability. But I think the other problem, and one of the things we really sort of learned after the initial gold rush of AI, is that it's not necessarily as reliable as we would like it to be. And in itself, it can't be trusted to do everything. And therefore, what are the user cases we've got where we know that we can take the risk of using it without having to be dependent on it, because it's not necessarily going to be able to deliver what we want right now. So the final thing I just want to talk a little bit about, which is not necessarily to do with sustainability reporting, but is kind of key to what we're doing, is one of the challenges. Everyone's looking at the data center and they look at the computers in the data center and say, oh, well, they're using a lot of energy. But the kind of key elephant in the room for me is that no one's actually saying, well, actually, it isn't the data center and it isn't the computers, it's the software that's running on there. And so the Green Software Foundation have generated their ISO standard, which is the software carbon intensity. But if you're a software developer, there isn't much incentive to look at energy efficiency and the amount of compute needed to deliver software. And you can absolutely see this with AI. The incentive is to get a product out to market to get it done as quickly as possible. But clearly, and maybe John might talk about this in a bit, the obvious blocker that's hit AI right now is we don't have the data centers. We don't have the compute. Even if we could build the data centers, we probably wouldn't have the energy to deliver them. So there maybe needs to be a bit more awareness and focus on how you actually develop the software and what the software carbon intensity standard looks at emission rates, operations, looks at how you're actually developing the frameworks and how you're developing the software. The other thing that the testing group in the BCS have been looking at is how you actually test software for its sustainability. So effectively looking at it in terms of a kind of non-functional performance test, but instead of looking at it in terms of performance relative to the amount of hardware, looking at performance in terms of the actual emissions that the software delivers. Now, this is unfortunately a lot more complex than you initially think, because the average software product now is actually a hyper-connected set of variables coming from multiple sources. So it's quite difficult to kind of pinpoint one specific bit of software and say, well, that's the efficient bit. But what the standard helps to do is help developers think about how they actually deliver their coding in a way that is more sustainable. And then that obviously relates to being able to do more with less, and then starting to address some of those problems of power, data center, and then obviously carbon emissions, because if you can deliver more sustainable software, then you don't need as many data centers and you don't need as much energy. But one of the kind of challenges is right now inadequate tooling. So we don't have the tooling which helps us actually measure it. We don't really know what's going on. So within cloud infrastructure, it's quite opaque. A lot of the software vendors kind of give you sustainability data, but you could get exactly the same software product on one cloud provider, and then you do the same thing on a different cloud provider, and you get completely different sustainable carbon emissions for exactly the same workload. So why is that? And certainly to a certain point, there maybe is no emphasis at the code level. So just measuring, solely on code efficiency, that kind of ignores some of the broader system level implications like data center and user behavior. But there is no standard testing framework. And I think if we're going to focus on something in the future, it's about what is the way of actually improving the energy efficiency, and what is the way that we can actually do to help people write more sustainable software. Maybe a bit more thought about how people used to write software when computing was at an absolute premium. People wrote extremely efficient software because they couldn't get any more. We've had a long period of cheaper, more powerful compute that has maybe moved people away from that, software developers, but now we're hitting another bottleneck with AI. Maybe it's time to go back and address how we code and how our hyper-connected software products actually work together to do it in a more energy efficient way. And I think that is me running out of time. Yep. So just in a quick summary, let's look at AI and the environment. So actually, how are we using AI today? So one really important one for the UK is we use AI to help predict weather. And then those weather patterns then feed into how we generate electricity, because we then get a better understanding in terms of what we're going to get for renewables, what we're going to get from PV. Obviously, the weather patterns help us predict the power generation. That enables us to understand whether we're going to need to call on power from Europe, if we're going to need to call on power from some more sort of legacy systems like nuclear and gas, and therefore AI is helping us predict those weather patterns. Another really useful thing is this Mayflower. So it's an autonomous AI-driven ship. So it's basically a little research boat that they put out to sea, and it's kind of cruising around the oceans, collecting data, and it's being guided, controlled, and managed by AI. And finally, one that's been here for a very long time is that we use AI to look at and analyze data and to learn. And so when we're trying to map rainforests to understand whether people are chopping down the rainforests, what's the health of the forests, because obviously we use those as a natural sink for our carbon emissions. AI is helping us use satellite data to continuously map what's happening in the forest in a way that wouldn't necessarily be possible for us if we were to do it by ourselves. And so it's really helping us get a lot of data, and then it's learning how that data actually relates to what's going on. So that is probably the end of my presentation. Do we have John?
No, unfortunately we don't, I think.
Oh.
Yet. I was wondering, could we take some questions or comments on your section?
Let me see if I can track John down.
Yeah. Could I actually start off with a question?
Yeah.
With all the reporting, with financial reporting, you have to have external auditors. Are there any plans to have external auditors either now or in the future as far as the sustainability reporting?
So these, yeah, I guess. So, I mean, generally what happens with companies who are doing the sustainability reporting is they will get a third party to come in and sort of help them define what their reporting framework is. And I mean, a good example is people like KPMG and CAP. These companies have a sustainability organization. One of the things I think that's kind of definitely quite key to it is the let's see, guys, when we get to the ISSB and IFRS S1 and S2, which are the more accountancy-based models, what their really objective is, they will need to be audited in a way that they are already audited, because one of the kind of drivers is to be able to access capital, you need to prove that you meet a certain sustainability criteria. And the other thing is about climate change and climate risk is that if a company is exposed to climate risk and there is things like insurance liabilities, then their sustainability reporting needs to capture the fact they understand what their climate risks and their climate opportunities are, and that then feeds into how you would actually then be raising capital. And the idea is that people who can prove that they are able to document their risk, document what they're doing, prove that they are pursuing a net zero target, those are going to be deciding factors in terms of them being able to get investors, investments, will maybe affect their stock price, share price, and will obviously change the price at which they can access capital at. So yes, absolutely, it needs to be an auditable standard, and it will need to be done by auditors, I guess.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions?
Hold on. Oh dear, John is sick. Oops. Right.
Yeah, there's a question from Chucks.
Yep. What's the question, Chucks? So look, you're mute. Press to unmute.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi there.
Yeah, my question is more related to the career aspect of sustainability. I don't know if that would be entertained.
That's fine. What's your question? Career?
Okay. So I am currently a traceability data analyst, and I'm looking forward to eventually stepping into sustainability reporting later on in my career.
Mhm.
So it's majorly part of why I joined this event today. So I would really love to know what paths should I, follow at the moment. Moving from the traceability data analyst, what would be the best, or what should be the next step for someone in my field?
So I guess you're an analyst now, did you say?
Yes, I am an analyst in traceability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm looking
Right.
forward to stepping into sustainability reporting later on in my career. And
Yeah.
it's something I would want to start preparing for from now. So I was wondering, what should be the best next step for me?
So I guess there's kind of two ways. If you want to pursue like a non-technical route, then you kind of go to the consultative approach, which is things like the KPMG sustainability reporting practice, the consultancy companies, there's lots of kind of niche boutique consultancy companies out there who will either provide tooling, so software tooling to help industry specific sustainability reporting requirements. So there are certain companies that focus on automotive, shipping and logistics. The other side is obviously to implement technology solutions, so sustainability reporting technology solutions. And so, like I spoke about, Microsoft Sustainability Manager, that's just one of many possible companies that are delivering sustainability reporting software. But I guess the biggest challenge right now, the biggest pain point for companies that are trying to do this, it resolves around data. So they're finding it difficult to get good data, especially with Scope 3 reporting, which is the carbon reporting all the way up and down the supply chain. So all of the kind of carbon associated everything you manufacture, your logistics, transportation. So from that perspective, their pain point is data. So if you kind of thinking about thinking about data analytics, thinking about being able to provide and help with sort of data, either as an initially within something that's already a kind of well-established route, which is data analytics, and then obviously the final case, which is this a valid case for agentic AI? So could I use agentic AI to develop a user case that would allow companies to kind of rapidly define a business process, collate the data sources they have, go out into the reporting world and understand what changes are happening in reporting standards, and then actually update the processes accordingly. So, could you develop probably a agentic AI process, either using an existing large language model or actually maybe using a small language model instead, to help you deliver this for them? And I guess those for me are the three areas. But the biggest challenge, the biggest headache of people I'm talking to right now is they struggle to collate their data to do any realistic, decent reporting. And so they'll get the KPMGs to come in, or whichever niche boutique provider there. They have this beautiful framework for how to do their reporting. All they need to do is populate the data, but the real headache is actually populating all of that data in a way that is useful. They can actually do their reporting. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answered my question, and it actually opened my eyes to maybe another niche I should really consider. Solving the pain point of helping them get relevant data for their processes. I think that should be more impactful when compared to just the reporting part of sustainability.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? So Margaret, I just got something from John. John says he's sick. Can you hear me, Margaret?
I was muted. Sorry, I was muted. What we could actually then do, if there's no other questions or points, go straight on to the AGM if you're happy.
Could do, or I've got, so look, I've got another here. Got any other presentations I can give here? Let's have a look. Hold on, let me have a look. I did do another one, which was all around, we did a research project on data centers and AI.
That sounds good.
Let me see if I can find that. Where did I put it? Here we go. Hold on, you're still on share, so you can see all my files. And where did I put that? I put that.
I'll leave it still recording.
Yeah, give me a second. I'm just going to go find where I put it. I can't remember where that is. GreenIT. It's in. Yeah, I did it for the maths people. Maths people. Where did I put them? Is it GreenIT? Sorry, I just can't remember. Let's make that into our maths. There we go. Right, so there we go. So this was for the maths people. Right. Here we go. I'm just going to do another presentation.
Have you unshared?
Huh?
Have you unshared?
I should be shared still. So can you see that?
You're still on the previous one.
Am I?
No, you have to unshare and then reshare.
Okay, sorry. Right, let me do that. I'll zoom. Right. Stop sharing. Here we go. I don't use Zoom very much anymore. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go and share another one, which is this one. This was for guys who were. So I did this presentation for some digital developers, and this was helping them. They were looking at software development. I'll get rid of that stupid thing. There we go. There was mathematicians who were very good at data modeling, mathematical problem solving using AI to do things like that, and they were more interested in understanding about AI and AI data centers and what the relationship between AI and their kind of mathematical models. So I go to the first one. So no energy, no data centers, no AI, no progress. And this is really a kind of summary of where we are today. Our sort of grid is at max capacity. This notional view that the UK is going to be the number 3 AI company in the world has a requisite on some data centers, 50 odd data centers. And the challenge is, how do we build the data centers, provide the energy, so that we can actually have our AI and do our AI progress like we want to. So obviously, from models to energy. So, computer software and models, simulations are complex, require big energy systems. Software translates these models into executable programs. Computers in data centers run the software. Data centers provide the computable power, but obviously that requires energy. And, if you're implementing software models which are kind of coded, software provides its user interfaces and computational algorithms. Software and the implementation of models allows this ongoing iteration and testing. So let's think a bit about, where is the got all this crap in the way. I can't see. I'm doing this presentation for a while. But here we go. So UK national grid. So let's have a look at what we've got. So we've got, if you look at our grid, we've got nuclear. If you look at the UK thing here, we've got, most of our kind of nuclear is kind of spread out here, there, and everywhere. All of our kind of hydro and wind capability is spread around the UK coastline. So all of the connectors are coming into the various places of the coastline, and the PV is kind of based around the south coast of England. So let's have a look what's going on today. So I love this. At this point in time, the UK is, thank you. This is a map of the UK development. So at this point in time, because the weather's crappy and it's windy, 53.4% of all our energy, which is 22 gigawatts, is coming from renewables, of which I think nearly all of that is going to be wind, isn't it? Yep. 14% fossil fuel. God, I stopped doing that. And then we've got the low carbon one. So we're going to be looking at nuclear that's coming in at 7.4. So as we can see, at this point in time, and this is obviously the direction we want to go to, the majority of our energy really needs to be coming from renewables, which it is. But obviously, if you want to build your data centers and you need energy, you're going to have to be tapping into some of these energy sources. I'm just going to close that. This one go down. What's happened there? Right, let's get rid of it. How do we close that? Right, can we? Right, close that and. Oh, can you see this actually, by the way?
No, we can still only see the 3 pictures of the UK with the 2
Okay.
photos.
Right. No, this is okay. This is okay. What I've got here is a nice picture of the live generation of energy in the UK, but that's not working. Let's see if that works. Okay, that doesn't. Yeah. Unfortunately, Zoom doesn't like that. Okay, so what the basic premise is here on the right, we've got a few examples of where people have been trying to put data centers in the sea for cooling. But the kind of long and short of it is that, as the grid develops, and as we want to start building out our capability, we're probably going to want to put data centers where the energy sources are, because it's quite difficult to build the grid up. And the challenge is that most data centers in the UK are kind of associated around the London area, and most new energy generation is not associated around the London area. So one of the kind of ideas that there's a research group that's ongoing now, which is looking at future AI in the UK. And one of the recommendations would be to start thinking about putting data centers in areas where the energy supply is available. But also that then requires us to make sure that we actually have the network capacity needed. But one of the kind of objectives would be to looking at building data centers in areas where you're kind of more likely to have the energy. Another big challenge, and then this is from Virginia in America, which is where the Americans are building their data centers and a lot of their AI data centers, is what they actually found out is that the data centers compete for the resources in a way that people are actually seeing their energy bills go up. There's more a kind of, I guess, more of a sort of thing of the American system, where the state's kind of more associated with your energy is delivered by your state, and therefore you're reflected in that. But when you start putting in massive data centers into areas, they're competing with energy, and therefore they have a larger purchasing power. And what happens is that people then find it more difficult to get their own energy, and they have to pay more. And so what's happening is that people living in Virginia are finding that their electricity bills are going up. The other thing is that, a bit ironically, to reduce the carbon footprint associated with data centers, they start using water. And a large data center can use up to 5 million gallons of water, I think that's per day. And this is really because rather than using electricity to cool the data, they just use water to cool the data centers. But they even reached a point where in the UK, we've had a number of requests for data centers being actually rejected by local authorities because they can't provide the water needed to actually build the data centers. So one of the things is that this massive construction of AI data centers is actually having it's having a big impact on resources. And the UK's biggest challenge is that actually there is no power to deliver it. So we need to find a way of doing it. And even get to the point where, if you look at water, we've got a stat here that single AI prompt, like asking ChatGPT, can indirectly consume about 500 milliliters of water. Well, you think that's not a lot, but when you think of all the tens of millions and hundreds of millions of ChatGPT questions that are going on every day, all the fact that all the Google browsers are now using Gemini to answer your Google searches, then they need to think about how they're going to cool these data centers, because there really isn't the water available to actually deliver the capabilities. And even in America, where they're trying to build these power, this huge AI data center capability, and they think it's a power problem. Well, it's not just a power problem; it's a water problem as well. And even if they manage to address the power problem, a lot of the places where they have the data centers in the US, it's going to be very difficult for them to actually deliver water unless someone fundamentally looks at how you deliver the data centers. So I've talked about this already. So this is green software carbon intensity in the other slide. So how can you make AI more efficient? Well, you can look at the models, and one of these things they talk about is pruning. Interesting, if you look within a data model, within an AI model, what they're saying is that probably, particularly in some of the LLMs, especially, 80% of those neural networks have never been used. And you're building a big model, you're loading a model into a data center, and you're loading these vector databases with all these data points on there. But on these neural networks, most of it doesn't get used. So one of the things that people are thinking now is actually, it's called AI model pruning, which is just to clear out all the dead wood. And actually move away from there and look at something a bit more specific. The other thing that there's a kind of researcher idea is that originally AI models are basically around GPUs. GPUs were developed for gaming. They're kind of gaming processors. So are there some more specialized hardware that can be developed that is completely developed just for AI? And so there are a number of people organizations who are looking at redefining a chipset and defining a set of chipsets which are just specifically optimized for this, and then looking at trying to optimize data. But I guess one of the big things that we need to think about in terms of AI is looking at whether you need a large language model. So historically, research institutions like universities will develop their own AI model, so-called small language model, which would be specifically focused on answering a single set of problems. So an LLM is their large language model is there to answer all problems, and whether it does and doesn't do that is questionable. But do you really need, a language model that can do everything when, from the perspective of maybe a university research project or a business process, you don't need a large language model. You just need a model that is specifically tuned for the one little thing you're doing. And one of the challenges is that people are trying to have these models to do everything. And, that's one of the things that kind of probably impress people most about ChatGPT and Gemini and these is you can ask any question and get maybe the answer you want. Maybe you don't get the answer you want. But when we're looking at more specific things, we could probably get away with a much smaller model and therefore would have a much smaller energy footprint. Now, I think I've already done this in my other presentation. So that would be my greatly reduced AI one, but sorry, I would have done a longer one, but I've just picked that up. So in summary, what we're kind of looking at is UK wants to be a big data center producer, wants a big AI producer. In order to do that, we need the data centers. In order to have the data centers, we need the power. Currently, we don't have the power. So in our data center strategy, and this would be something John could probably talk more, is that we need to build data centers in the right place for AI. We need to also probably focus a lot more, and this is not just the UK, it's everywhere, is that we need to focus a lot more on the models. And actually, again, back to my other presentation about the carbon intensity of softwares, we need to develop AI models that don't have the same energy footprint. And even if you're looking at places like America, who feel that they could just build the data centers, they're going to hit, and they are hitting bottlenecks already. And the construction of their hyperscale data centers for AI is having adverse effects on people who are living in the communities where the data centers are, because their energy bills are skyrocketing and their water table is disappearing because these data centers are just consuming so much. So the reality is that if we're going to deliver what we want from AI, it needs to be created in a more sustainable way. And I don't think that we're going to be able to proceed as is in the current form. But also, if you look at other things in the past where we've been limited by resources, I think just by the fact that the data centers won't be there, will be driving people to have to develop more sustainable models, because if they want to get their AI out there, then they need to do that. And I mean, the best example of this is, look how expensive memory DIMMs are. 18 months ago, 12 months ago, they were 1/3 the price they are now. And because the demand of AI is driving this, it's just pushing up the price of the resources, because the resources are being limited. And, if it gets more expensive, then that kind of drives people to be more efficient in terms of what they do. Thank you. That wasn't the presentation I was planning to do, so probably not quite as complete as we would like it. But are there any questions on AI data centers and AI models and how they need to be made more sustainable?
That was excellent, Alex. Thanks very much for stepping in with that second presentation. Well, before any other questions get in, can I hop in with a quick question?
Yeah.
Is there any way in which seawater could be used and been treated in some sort of way that it wouldn't actually damage the data centers, instead of sort of, shall we say, brown water or clear water?
So I guess they could do. I mean, so here I'll just go back to this slide. So the one on the left. So we've got two data centers. One was a Microsoft one that was plonked in off the Netherlands, and the other one is a Chinese one they're just putting in there. So these are data centers that actually live under the water, and they are just naturally cooled by seawater. John says that that's just like a kind of gimmick, and they're not actually realistic. But let's see. So the idea of these sort of modular data centers is they would just go and live in the sea, and they would just naturally be cooled by the seawater, and after 2 years they'd sort of come out again. I guess one of the big challenges of using seawater to cool stuff, and then this would be best iterated by the Hinkley Point nuclear power station, is obviously you're putting warm water, sucking seawater in, going through some sort of heat exchanger and putting out again. And in the UK, there's very tight environmental protection about that. So the Hinkley Point, one of the reasons it costs so much money is they've had to put in this super complex heat exchange system to stop fish getting killed by the cooling systems of the nuclear power station. Having said that, someone did an assessment and worked out that it's probably ended up costing about £3 million for every fish that would have been killed, and maybe the money could have been probably better spent on different conservation projects. But in the UK, that would be one of the problems of taking seawater to cool stuff. The environmental protection standards are quite high, and that might make it a bit challenging.
So you said one was China. Did you say the other one was from?
So on these two data centers, the bottom one is one that was a Microsoft one that was put outside in Holland, sorry, and that spent about 2 years in the sea. Then they just brought it up, and they're just washing the barnacles off it after it spent 2 years in the sea. And the one on the top right is last year. That is one in China, which they kind of copied the idea, and they just put that into a lagoon in China to create their own version of a sea-cooled data center.
I was wondering whether there'd be a sort of a bad effect from the salt, etc.
No, I think they're designed. Obviously, you can design stuff to. So there's a completely sealed unit, apart from obviously the cables coming in and out. So I think it survived okay. It's just whether it would scale on, the amount. So if you're looking at like a hyperscale data center, these things are like huge, massive warehouses just filled with processing units. And it's whether it'd be economically viable to do something like that. So these are just test data centers that they put into the sea. I don't know whether Microsoft is going to carry on with that or not. But yeah, I think obviously if you could find a way of using seawater to cool the data centers, putting the data centers on the coast, because that's where the power is coming in from the wind turbines, and then using seawater to cool them. If you can get around the environmental problems that are associated with doing something like that, then yeah, it's a ready support source of unlimited water that you can use for cool stuff.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? In which case, I think we'd. There's something just come up in the chat.
There's something in the chat. Hold on, we can stop sharing and to the chat. Chat 1.3. Let's have a look in there.
Scandinavian countries would be good for data centers, or
Well,
even
they are
Arctic Ocean.
They are good. So yes, there's a big data center industry in Scandinavia. The other good one is Iceland. So they use the geothermal electricity, of which they have lots, which is quite cost effective. So they use the geothermal energy in Iceland to heat, to power the data centers, and because it's cold, because you're up above the Arctic Circle, you can use cooling. It's natural cooling. So maybe we should suggest that we should put all of the data centers on Greenland.
Yes, that would raise some interesting questions.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. That was excellent. Any other questions or comments?
yeah, I have a question for Alex. So regarding the sustainability matrix with quantum computing coming in and the data centers for those sort of technologies, along with all this stuff that is doing AI, what is the sort of industry standard for measuring sustainability for these new technologies? Because I guess in the old days we used to look at all these PUEs and stuff like that, but now with mining and minerals, with all these technologies that we are putting in, do they calculate it from the time of mining to the until it's been reprocessed? Do they look at that whole life cycle?
So this is, I guess, to a certain degree, this is what Scope 3 carbon emissions is trying to capture, just for the CO2 emissions, which are, So, one of the challenges is if you look at a PC, and it kind of varies between your laptop and I guess a PC in a data center, or a server in a data center, is that the embedded carbon associated with the manufacturing life cycle and then recycling of your laptop PC is a significant proportion. Now it can vary, but in some cases it's 50%, sometimes it's down to sort of 10-20% of the actual total emissions associated with the server is in its manufacturing and end of life. So one of the objectives of Scope 3 emissions is to capture that so that you get all of it sliced and diced. Whereas a bit challenging is if I'm running a server, if I'm running a cloud service in a data center, I need to know what proportion of that server that's running in that period of time that's running my workloads, what proportion of the embedded carbon is associated with that. And I think that's where it gets a bit tricky, because you're kind of, making it up a little bit, or it's really hard work to do. And I think this is one of the reasons why companies are pushing back and saying, well, hold on, this Scope 3 is challenging, because it's just really difficult to get the answers to that. And because it's really difficult to get the answers to that, that's why these companies are pushing back. And partly, and I kind of understand, they say, well, what's the point? What's the point of us providing sustainability data when it takes a huge amount of effort, and it doesn't make any difference because we've got to build these things anyway. So you're just saying, well, this is the carbon emissions associated with my compute. Well, great, what difference does that make? Whereas it might be more important to say, well, what's the carbon intensity of energy of this area? And if you say, oh, my data center's in Scandinavia and everything is renewables and there's no cooling, then the carbon intensity of energy and the carbon intensity of the data center is much lower. But interesting, Santana. I mean, it would be, I think, quantum computing is the big thing that would actually fundamentally change AI. But I remember going to my first auditorium meeting, and when I was first started for IBM back in the late 90s, and the guy came in there and he said quantum computing is the way forward, and by early in the 2000s we'll have quantum computing everywhere. And we're at 26 now, and it's kind of there, but it's not there. So I hope it's not like fusion reactors, which are next year, and they will always be next year.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? In which case, I think could actually ask everybody to thank Alex either with the reactions and or alternatively just to sort of clap. That was fantastic.
Okay.
Especially with stepping in with that to cover
John.
John's one like that was absolutely superb. I really appreciate it.
I've obviously said anything that I said John would disagree with. He doesn't believe any of it.
Well, just actually stopping the recording.
Okay.
At this stage then, if you're happy about it, Alex, we can go into the AGM.
Okay, yeah.
Right, I'll just got to see if I can come
So I'm
up
just
with the...
going to write a quick WhatsApp to John. Okay, going to the AGM now. Margaret?
Just wait for Margaret to share the screen. I think she had a problem in the computer, so just joining.
Okay. Right. Wait 1 second. Have a look. I've stopped sharing. Have I stopped sharing?
Yeah, you've stopped sharing it.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
And I'll just actually make sure. Can you make me co-host?
Who's that for?
Margaret.
Who
I
makes
fell out, so I had to rejoin again.
who could make you
I think.
co-host?
Oh no, actually I still seem to be host. That's all right. Okay. I'm all right. I seem to have lost out and I couldn't get back in again. Right. So if we've got should hopefully be able to share. Could you make my there seems to be two of me. Alex, if you could make the other one co-host.
The new one.
Well, yeah.
Um,
Because you, Alex, you became host when I fell off the network.
Let me have a look.
So
Host.
if you on the if you put your mouse over my name, move across to the right where it
Yeah.
says more.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Okay.
Make host.
Yes, that's fine.
Host. Margaret Ross is now the host.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I use Teams now because I bought a license for Teams, so I have to stop using Zoom, and now I don't know how to use it anymore.
Now, with any luck, I should be able to get into the. Let's make sure my slides up. And this should, with any luck, is this actually showing it?
Yep, that's fine. Yeah, I can see it now.
Right. And if I go through onto the second slide, is it working?
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay. Very quickly then. Sorry, apologies for that. I succeeded, unfortunately, in taking myself off. Summary of the minutes of the previous AGM. Just literally went through the membership and just actually saying the number of events we had. We also, in the previous AGM, mentioned about the winners of the competition. for the open ones, including from the UK and Sri Lanka, and the student class from Greece and the UK and London at the schools class, which was very good. The theme for that one was Invest in Our Planet. We had the Zoom events and a considerable number of articles and non-BCS presentations and other events that we held. We also went through the budget from the previous year, which was dropped down from 950 to 700. Again, it dropped again. And the spending was actually associated with the prizes for the competitions. There was the elections that took place and no other business. So very quickly, that was the minutes of the previous one. So if we come on to this year's AGM, we have proposed and seconded for those minutes. Santana, is there any objections or otherwise?
I can't see any hands, so we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Assume it's accepted. Then we go into the Secretary's report. This is basically showing that the distribution of our members. We have lost a few members. We've got now 671. We have a lot of people actually on the MBCS. Maybe a lot of people might like to think about upgrading to fellow. Just a suggestion. And we've got the sort of the age distribution. It would be nice to actually get more members, particularly at the earlier age. And also during this year of 2025, we had again the green competition. This time the theme was Our Power, Our Planet. The open winners came from Sri Lanka, with a runner-up from the UK. The HE winners was from Finland, with the runner-up from Italy. And the schools was actually again the Henriette Barnett School in London, which is actually a girls-only school. So definitely looking at our winners here, BCS is definitely international. Also, there was just literally means that if somebody is not BCS members, they can get onto our mailing list, and there's no cost to actually join that, and then they can actually join the Zoom meetings for free as well. The theme for the 2026 competition: how could computers reduce waste in your community? Community being school, university, or organization, now or in the future. So what people are actually asked to do is to put it on a single PowerPoint slide, either looking at now or either looking into the future. So how can computers reduce waste in your community? So please do encourage members. If it's the open class, you can do a team of up to 3 or an individual, but if it's a team, one must be a BCS member. If it's the HE students or schools, they have to have, there's no requirement to have any previous connection with the BCS, but all the entries for the students and schools must be through a member of staff. They have a proposer and seconder for this report. Satana, could I ask you?
Yes, I can. Yeah, propose.
And that's no objections
No.
or otherwise?
I can't see any hands or objections down.
Okay, it's accepted. Thank you. So we come on to Santana's your own one. Okay, over to you, Santana.
Yes, so the budget allocation for 2024 and 25 was 184. And in 2024-25, we spent £47 and 4 pence. That was mainly on catering for one of the events that we had. As Margaret was explaining, the Open and HSC prize was gifted via vouchers and access to the BCSE library, and those tokens really didn't come from our budgets. It came from the central BCS funding. The budget allocation for 2025 and 2026 is £392.50. And again, speakers will get a BCS e-library token as part of their contribution towards any presentations. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. That's been proposed and seconded. Can I ask if there's any objections, abstentions?
Don't see no objections.
Okay, thank you. Take it as accepted. So, Alex, we're coming into your report now.
Okay, yeah.
Chair's
So,
report.
Events 24-25. So we had the What's New in GreenIT 2024. That was John Booth and Ewan, part of the AGM, I think. We did sustainability film and TV programs required for a greener industry from Pamela. Augmented wildlife experience, trail sport nature. That was by Professor Amanda Costendas. Tech and sustainability, perfect matched or a costly illusion. Peter Ray, Darren Hilton. We got digital engineering. What happens when digital transformation meets sustainability goals? We had recycling your electricity and use of AI in handling e-waste, looking at some emerging trends in the world of e-waste by Scott Butler. Next slide, please. Chair support visiting articles and non-BCS. So we had a visit, which was the National Data Center Academy Open Day. That's John Booth set up the National Data Center Academy near Birmingham, where he's got lots of servers and chillers, and basically can do some training and shows people what kind of data centers look like and allows them to learn some more. We're part of an ongoing AI research project, which is looking at AI infrastructure, AI models. It's part of a consortia, which includes research organizations, the data center industry, UK Gov, and the BCS. And really, this is feeding into the government's plan to be UK to be the whatever top AI country in the world. And so this is a research project with us and the engineering people, which is again feeds into government, helps them sort of make decisions. We've got BCS software development event in March. So the whole BCS ran a big event predominantly focused on AI. And we presented sustainability and sustainable computing. And then the Maths Society asked us to go and present sustainability and AI implementation. There we go.
That has been proposed and seconded.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No objections. No hands raised.
Okay, accepted. Okay, then we come on to the elections for 25-26. For Alex, been proposed as chair, and John Booth as vice chair. Proposed and seconded. Any objections or abstentions?
No hands raised. No objections.
Okay. Then for treasurer, Fontanas and myself as secretary. Proposed and seconded. Any objections or otherwise?
Nope, don't see any.
No hands.
Then we have the other ones are the officers, which was early careers officer, Menina, and inclusion officer Maureen. Again, proposed and seconded.
No objections.
Just realised there's a rather untidy bit of the layout. I thought committee started on the next line. Sorry about that. So the rest of the committee en bloc, proposed and seconded.
No objections.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Then the elections took place. People can always be co-opted during the year, so there's no problem about that. So we come on to future events and back to I'll do the first one, which is actually talking about the student competitions we mentioned. So that's a theme. How could computers reduce waste in your community now or in the future? So you've got almost a choice of two options. The closing date is April, the Earth date. So you have the students' classes. So you're going from primary school to postgraduate. if the names of students in HE, postgraduate, and the open ones actually go up on the website, but for schools, then we just give the name of the school, not the name of the winners. Although, in fact, all winners receive their own certificates, which we send to the school or the colleges or the universities, etc., and they deal with the distribution. But the entries from any of the academic establishments, whether it's HE or schools, must be through a member of staff. So we don't want to deal directly with any student or child. And that also gives a sort of a check really on the responsibility of it. So so do please encourage entries. Pass across now to Alex. Did you want to say anything about this one?
Future events. So this is today. I think that impact. So we've got Wednesday the 4th of March, Climate Change, the Impact of Industrialized Animal Farming by Andrew Knight. We're going to try and schedule another one in March 2026. I was speaking, do you remember the Cambion guys? And we do a joint event basically looking at corporate sustainability in the face of great change. So this is iterating the fact that everything's just gone completely, I mean, lots of things everything is just moving around. So, the Cambion guys basically are much more the advisory end, advising companies on corporate sustainability. And what they said is they'll do a joint event and we can talk through the kind of corporate view of things and how does that then relate into an IT view of things as well. And I guess future events, we're planning to have an event, consistently have an event, like a Zoomy event, maybe once every couple of months or so. And then with Santana and his London group, we sometimes do joint events and they kind of work quite well because you get some more people. And Santana's London group is so well organized that, they get very good turnout, extremely interesting speakers. Sponsors are so well drilled at organizing events that we just like to, be part of their events as well because it's always good for us. Okay, Margaret. So anyone here, if you're not yet a BCS member and you'd like to read details, similarly, if you want to be part of the committee, if you have any good ideas, if there's anything that interests you in the world of sustainability and technology, please reach out to us. Say you want to be on the committee, say what you want to do, say what interests you. And I'm, always looking for new ideas. We always want to have someone else's view or viewpoint. So by all means, if you want to be part of our group, please reach out. Okay, Margaret, I think that any other business? None sent in advance. So I assume that's a no. All right.
At that stage, I'll stop sharing.
Yep. And is that the end of the
discussion?
Is there anything else we need to do?
No. Congratulations on the people that actually duly stayed with us for the AGM. So thank you for staying with us. Is any other points? Now we've actually closed the AGM. Anybody would like to raise anything on any issues?
Anything they want to talk about? Anything of interest? Anything in the world of sustainability?
One question that came up, Alex, is your slides. Would they be available?
Yeah.
If so, could you send them to me and I'll get them popped up on the website?
Okay, I might just edit the second one a bit. I'll put them together as one. That's why I'll just join the two. I mean, I would have done, but I think because the data center is normally John's expertise, I took all the data center stuff out. So I'll try and just consolidate it into a single slide deck and I'll send it across. That should be fine.
Fantastic. The recording, so is actually, I sort of think that the slides then probably will be available in a couple of weeks by the time we actually get to the BCS, and the video probably about 3 to 4 weeks. Then that should be up on our website, because that was a question about the availability afterwards. Okay. But that was a fantastic presentation, and Alex, I'm so impressed with you. Actually, the fact you managed to pull the second one out and sort of tailor it as you went through as well.
No problem.
Yeah,
very impressive. Definitely.
Okay.
Thank
Yes.
you very much, and wish everybody well, and hope all goes well.
Yep.
Yes. Have a great weekend, everybody, and thank you.
Cheers. Bye bye.